Seth, Reiss, and Will Tracy are the screenwriters and executive producers of the dark comedy thriller, The Menu. I'm Matt Noble of Gold Derby, and I wanted to kick things off by asking you, what was the most important decision you had to make when writing this film? And we'll start with Seth.
Oh, I think the most important decision, that's a great question. I think the most important decision that we made when writing the film, there were probably several, but the one that comes into my mind as soon as you asked it was that we just kind of trusted our taste and what we found interesting, and we never sort of veered away from that. And I think I like to think that is embodied in the creative spirit of the movie.
Will?
Yeah, I think there was a version of this movie. Sometimes it helps to have in your head while you're writing a version of the movie that you don't want to make and you don't want to write. And I think we knew what that version was. I think that there's probably a bit more of like a B horror exploitation-y, torture porny version of the film where the food kind of falls by the wayside, and maybe some of the more interesting, spiky emotional nuances fall by the wayside in favor of something a bit more kind of blunt and violent. And I think we knew that didn't interest us as much as trying to make something that had kind of little grace notes of not only humor but beauty and an appreciation for the food, but also something to say about the industry of food. So we kind of just avoided doing that, even and at times when there was some slight pushback about wanting it to go that way, I think we resisted.
That's a funny oh, sorry, Matt, go ahead.
No, finish off, Seth.
No, when the trailer for the movie came out, I couldn't help but look at some comments, and people always just assumed the twist is cannibalism. And the funny thing about that is the first thing Will and I said to each other before we sat down to even outline it was, there will be no cannibalism.
Yeah.
So five years ago, there was never going to be cannibalism in The Menu.
Yes. Will, you said you wanted to comment on the say something about the sort of food industry and things. What were you guys wanting to say about it through this film?
Well, I think that we recognized at the outset that there was something of a resemblance between the way a kitchen works and the way other kind of collaborative processes that Seth and I are more familiar with work, whether it's writer's room of a show or even trying to collaborate writing a movie or making a movie, where there's a lot of ideas there, and also the damage that can sometimes be done to your own psyche when you kind of put everything you have into what is essentially going to be a product. And in the world of a restaurant, those pressures and the difficulty is magnified when you're doing it every night on end. Sometimes the menu doesn't change much. You're making it for a customer base that's oftentimes not very appreciative. You have no life outside of that world. And also the art that you're making in a kitchen is uniquely kind of ephemeral, right? I mean, it's literally goes into your digestive tract immediately, and then it's gone. And so if you were the best cook in the world in 1988, who's going to know it? So the question of who's going to know it now, 30 years later, 40 years later. So the question of legacy and the value of your art and how you'll be remembered, which I think everybody kind of somewhere inside, they want to be remembered. They want to feel as though they're contributing something of value and worth. Those questions become very, very complicated in a kitchen. And so I think that became a very interesting thing for us to examine. And I think we both sympathize with the chef in the film, but also feel as though he has let his ego lead him into a pretty monstrous corner.
And like, I guess, Seth, like on that sort of, what there are parallels between sort of being an artist creating food, or an artist creating a story, or creating a film. What are the
Yeah.
dangers for you guys as writers to fall into some of those traps that the chef does in the menu?
Well, I hope that Will and I have an opportunity 20 years from now to fall into those traps, because that would mean we've actually been successful. Right.
Yeah.
Right now, we're just like sort of cooks in that kitchen.
Yeah, that's true.
So we're a bunch of, I don't want to spoil it, but right now, Will and I are pretty much like the Jeremy Loudons of the of the film world. So no, I think it's hard, because any artist or any writer or anyone putting stuff out there has some sort of ego. And I think the movie really wrestles with the idea of ego, not just with the chef, but even with all the patrons who are there. It's all this restaurant does is feed their collective ego ecosystem. And so I do think the trap is probably to not be aware of your ego, and to acknowledge that it's okay to have one, but what do you do? What are the life decisions you make being aware of your ego? That's probably kind of something.
And the way that ego usually expresses itself is this insatiable hunger for more control, right? More control over the process, more control over like of every aspect of the process, and that can sometimes be really good, and one should fight for a certain degree of control, but it can also then lead to less collaboration, less perspective, and also sometimes the more control that you wrest away from something creatively, you're kind of then ceding control in other parts of your life, like your personal life, which then suffers, right? So that's, I guess, the cautionary thing for us, that I think that carries across all types of art, probably.
Do you guys, working together on this film, were you guys helpful in keeping each other's ego in check, or feeding each other's ego?
Yeah, I think we're a good
I'm
match.
in constant service of feeding Will's ego. There's nothing. I wake up in the morning thinking, how can I make this man's head larger? How can
Yeah, that's right.
I think we're so aware of one another, and we've been working together so long that we're aware of one another's egos, and we're also aware of the downfalls of them too. So I think we kind of keep each other in check pretty good.
Yeah, it's good. I think sometimes it's nice sometimes when you're, and I will avoid at risk of embarrassing both of us coming up with helpful examples of this, but I think that sometimes we have opposite insecurities and opposite fears. Some things that like feel like a really big deal to Seth, to me feel like I don't think you need. Why are you worrying about that? And then just when I start to feel like, oh, I'm kind of like the adult in this partnership, then I react like a 12-year-old to something that Seth feels like, we're good. What do you know? So it's good to have someone like that you get to like switch off being the crazy one. And so we match well like that, because I think that we're kind of freaked out by different things sometimes. So that's good, right?
Yeah, I mean, the only difference is I'm always right about the stuff.
Yeah, that's true. He that's right. He's always
that's
right.
like the only difference. But what you just said was good. Like, yeah.
Yeah, that's good. We've got I think another sort of like danger that the film highlights on is like that sometimes, like, if you get so caught up in the artistry of storytelling, that you sometimes lose sight of the purpose of the story that's being told. Can you think of any, like, even with this film or so, yeah, like where that's sort of also a danger for a writer to get so caught up in like just being really clever or really whatever that you sort of forget the heart of it?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's especially a danger in a story like this that has um it does kind of have a hooky, fun, propulsive thing to it. And like I said earlier, there's I think a purely what's the word I'm trying to looking for? I guess there's a more kind of surface approach to this movie that where you can kind of get the quick, fun, cinematic kicks out of it. But then you feel maybe a little bit unsatisfied at the end because you haven't really engaged with what the characters were feeling and what they wanted and what they think of the world and why they're interesting. So yeah, I that's something we were kind of always fighting for. I don't want to say fighting because I think everyone we worked with felt the same way, but wanting people in that dining room to even if at the outset they feel as that they may be somewhat one-dimensional, by the end of the film we feel like we know a bit about who they are. They have some self-awareness about who they are, and we may even find ourselves liking them in a way that we didn't expect. And also we may not find chef in the kitchen's grand design to be quite as cathartically given it to the rich as we maybe thought at the beginning of the evening.
Yeah, I think there's definitely an element of that where we really wanted, especially when we started really chiseling away at the script, we wanted to make people think like, do these people really deserve it?
Yeah.
You know, I think that's the element of the movie where the sort of eat the rich idea doesn't really ring true to me, only because, yeah, I mean, these are wealthy people and it's a high-end restaurant, but ultimately, you know, who is the bad guy here? And I think at certain points you root for a chef. You're like, yeah, he's the disseminator of justice. And then there comes a point where he's quoting Martin Luther King, and it's like, buddy, I don't know. But I do think for all of them, what is collectively true is that if this were a normal night and everybody had paid their money and gone home, and everyone in the kitchen had gone back to their barracks and chef had gone back to his cottage, is tomorrow that great for any of them? And I think the answer is probably not. And so I think they all need to go down with the ship. And I think that's a subversion of expectations that Will and I think tried to do throughout the movie, not just because we wanted to for the joy of subverting audiences' expectations. I just think we're kind of aware of them, and it's like, well, let's go this way, and that's more exciting creatively.
There's sort of an element to the guess, like this isn't the perfect analogy, but a little bit like a very sort of Wile E. Coyote-ness to them, where they've set their own trap for themselves. Like they've sort of like created this device and this world, this contraption that ends up harming them.
Right. They seem aware at a certain point that you're right. It's like Wile E. Coyote with a even more of a dawning self-awareness of, oh yeah, this is the way I react to these things, and this is why I'm here, and this is why I'm not going to get out of here, because I do this every time, and this is who I am.
Which
there's something about that feels like and towards the end, there's even a dawning awareness among some of them that we suggest that they feel as though, yes, this is where I should be, and there's even some sort of like poetry to that.
Yeah.
Look at like when the ground goes out from beneath him and he looks down and goes, oh no, like
right,
this isn't good.
Right.
In Will and I's version of that, the coyote then does talk for a while, even though he can't.
Yes.
And that's why we would eventually get fired from the project. But
with you guys, like the film is very funny at times. Like it's such a dark story, but it has like real comedic beats. William, you're like on Succession. You have similar things where there's really funny but dark scenes. What's the secret to dark comedy?
Well, I mean, I think, yeah, I think probably a commitment to whatever the reality is. So I think with something like with Succession, I think we can get away with that feeling of maybe unexpected comedy or satirical kind of ripples throughout the show, because it feels as though we've really done our homework on the world of business and how the C-suite operates. And so it doesn't feel like we're getting the surface jokey version of that world. It does feel as though we're still somewhat on the fly on the wall of how that process actually works, and how neurotic personalities would react in a situation like that. And I think the menu, we tried to do the same. Seth and I tried to do the same thing, where we really tried to commit ourselves to making that, to doing justice to the kitchen and how a kitchen would operate and the rules of the world of a tasting menu restaurant and the traditions and the ceremony of it, so that then when we have our characters react to it, they can react in an honest and funny way. And then when we escalate the situation, it feels as though the escalation is somehow natural and earned. Yes, this is sort of the next step of where a tasting menu could go. No one's done it yet, but someone could.
Yeah. I think also, any of those times where the benefit of film as opposed to real life is that when somebody's ego pops through, you can, in a movie or a TV show, you can stay on them for a couple beats.
Yeah, and isolate
and you can
it.
see it, and you can isolate it, and that is always pretty funny because you're evil, you're mad, you're a crazed person just popped through. And, in real life, you can't do that. So those sort of moments kind of go unnoticed a little bit, or they do go noticed by the people around you, but the moment passes. But, in film and TV, we can obviously isolate them. And those are quite honest moments, but they are funny.
Yeah, like it's funny just think about that, like what you were talking about before, like the self-awareness thing too. Like when the audience sees something that the character doesn't, there's can sometimes be good comedy there too. Like there's always where like this sort of like being really obvious about something but unaware of it, like is right. Very funny, and you get that in this film, but also in Succession you have that quite a bit as well. Right. What do each of you guys look for in a meal when you guys are having a meal? What kind of
really
meal
changed? I used to love this kind of thing. Like I used to be kind of a tasting menu, and I'll look, if someone offered me a table somewhere, I would, which I desperately hope they will, I will take the invitation. But I will say, maybe as I've gotten a little bit older and a little more tired and my metabolism is altered, I find the idea of the long journey of the 4 hours with the mini courses and small portions, I find it a bit exhausting, and by the end I feel like some big disgusting underground worm-like creature that's been gorging all this stuff. And I think now my tastes have changed. I kind of want my starter, I want my main, and I want maybe a dessert that I'll split, and then I'm out. That's something more, and it's mine, and it's a big portion, and that's it. And I kind of want that a little bit. I don't know how you feel, Seth.
No, I mean, I'll definitely stuff my face until I feel absolutely disgusting, but it will be probably just be like pork chop, mashed potatoes. One time, Will met me for dinner once, and this was a really gluttonous night, and I ordered an order of deviled eggs for myself. And then I also ordered a bacon cheeseburger, and Will was just like utterly disgusted by the like the richest, and fries, like the most rich. But see, if I work out, then I'm allowed my treats. So that was what that was. Yeah, but that's kind of like,
I've noticed a lot of writers work on a pathetic reward system of like, I have, because I was down in the coal mine, like writing something for a few hours until I got tired and I couldn't think of any more ideas. Now I deserve my big my big boy reward of my cheeseburger and deviled eggs.
Yeah.
Which will actually only make me not as productive tomorrow because I'll be sluggish and
I'll feel terrible about myself. Why would I
tell
ever
about
eat
yourself?
such a thing?
It's a repeating cycle.
Then feeling terrible, but then feeling terrible may actually lead to something good. Who knows?
No, right.
Matt, who knows?
Who knows?
I love it. If you were to use one word to describe this film, what word would you use to describe it? I don't mind who goes first.
That's good. I have never considered this. I want to think of a word that doesn't also sound self-aggrandizing, like that is too much of a praisey word about the movie. I'm just trying to think of a word that just accurately describes what it is.
Not like wonderful, must see. Like,
exactly. I don't want to say it like that because they all look like a jerk.
Best film ever made. I don't know. Is that more than one word? I would. You know what? I'm going to say weird.
You're going to say weird. All right.
Yeah, I think it's a weird movie. I think it's a weird movie. It has the trappings of a typical dramatic sort of structure, and even a normal dramatic setup, which a person who wasn't supposed to be there is there, But other than that, I do think if you're invested in the world, it's a weird world and it takes weird turns. Fair. And I'm happy for it to be weird.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Will, do you have a word?
Oh, I thought I got to hop onto his and avoid.
No, you can just agree with that word. It's fine.
Yes. Hope. These are two words, but hopefully surprising.
Okay, I like it.
Yeah.
Will could not let himself just say it was surprising.
I can't.
He had to let
This is my flaw as a human.
So not surprising. Not surprising in a hopeful way, Will, but
no, hopefully it will surprise audiences.
You are hoping that people
My hope
are
is
surprised.
that it will surprise people. I desperately hope that people find it surprising.
Okay. Yeah. So
but that's hard to communicate in one word.
Yeah. Like surprising question mark.
Yeah, there you go.
Hey guys, thanks so much for talking to us today. People watching this interview can go to goldderby.com where they can make their award predictions. Hey, all the best of luck for the menu with Phil, with all the awards that are down the pipeline and all the other things you're doing in TV as well for both of you. Thanks for spending the time. This was so fun to chat.
Oh, these were great questions. This was such a pleasure.
Yeah, really good questions. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.